Hi everyone, this is Rosie, and today we'll be sewing the Omnia pouch using jelly vinyl. So let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the pouch. This is my Omnia pouch pattern, which was originally designed to be made with 100% cotton quilting fabric. This one here is made with jelly vinyl, and I did make a few modifications to make it with the jelly vinyl. The pouch measures approximately 10 inches wide by 7 inches high, and it's 4 inches wide at the bottom. It has a nice zipper that opens wide, and you have a nice interior in here, a nice large interior. The original pouch used cam snaps on the sides, but for the jelly vinyl I am actually using rivets. So let's go ahead and take a look at the materials needed to make this pouch. This is the worksheet for making the original Omnia pouch. I will put a link in the description below the video to where you can find this worksheet. Now, the original pouch was meant to be made from fabric. Up here at the top of the worksheet you have a lot of cutting measurements. I want you to mostly ignore these for right now because these are measurements for the fabric pouch. As far as the pattern pieces go, you want to cut out this side panel here, and you want to cut out the zipper tab that's labeled option 2. There's another zipper tab down here which is option 1. That's the one that we used for the fabric pouch. And here is the original pouch that we made from fabric. Now, right here is the option 1 zipper tab, and I did use cam snaps on this pouch. But for the jelly vinyl pouch, I will be using rivets. So let's talk about the materials that you're going to need for the jelly vinyl pouch. You'll be cutting out a piece of jelly vinyl that is 10 inches wide by 18 inches high. Then you need to cut out 2 pieces of jelly vinyl for your side panels, and then 2 pieces of the vinyl for the option 2 zipper tab. For the zipper, I'm using a number 4.5 zipper. The width of the zipper tape is 1.25 inches, and the zipper is 20 inches long. This is a YKK zipper. I will be using Gutermann Mara 70 thread. And for my sewing machine needles, I'm just using a universal 9014 needle. You do want to have a Teflon foot for sewing on the vinyl on your sewing machine. And I will be using a lot of double-sided adhesive tape for this project. This tape is just 1/8 of an inch wide. And then I have 2 sets of rivets here, and we will be using Wonder Clips. Now, we also need to cut out some strips of fabric for binding, and I'll go over those individually. Here are the strips that you need to cut from your vinyl, and I've cut each one of these strips a little longer than they need to be. The 2 top ones up here are 11 inches long by 1/2 of an inch wide. The next 2 strips are 4 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. And the last 2 strips are 19 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. So let's go ahead and start making the pouch. We're going to start with the 2 4-inch binding strips and the 2 side panels. First thing you want to do is mark a line straight down the center of that 4-inch strip. Then we want to find the center of the bottom of the panel. And all I'm going to do is fold this in half and make a tiny clip. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. You need to be within your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance when you make that clip. And I've already gone ahead and marked this one. After you mark the line straight down the center of that 4-inch strip, you're going to place a piece of double-sided adhesive tape on each side of that center line. So I have one here, and the center line is right in here. Then you're going to remove the release paper. Just like that. And then you're going to take the side panel and you're going to place this top straight edge here right on top of that center line and adhere it down with the adhesive. And you want to be right on that line. And then after you have it adhered, you're going to fold over the vinyl to the other side. And then I like to take my point turner and just burnish it down. I have the binding secured to the top of each side panel. We're going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge on each binding piece. If you're worried about sewing through your double-sided tape, you should be okay if you've used the 1/8 inch wide tape, because the tape is right up here near that center line, and we're going to be sewing below the tape. I'm sewing on a Juki TL2010Q. I will be using a stitch length of 4.0. I have my Teflon foot installed, and I'm going to be sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of that binding. You do want to backstitch. Now, one thing that I find helpful is if I just lift this up slightly as I'm sewing, the vinyl will not stick to the bed of my machine. So we're going to start by backstitching. And then I'll just sew across. And backstitch at the end. Then you can go ahead and sew the binding onto the other side panel in exactly the same way. After you have the binding sewed onto the side panel, you just want to make sure that you caught the edge of the binding on the other side. Once everything looks good, you can go ahead and trim that binding even with the edge of each side panel. Take your jelly vinyl panel that you cut 10 inches wide by 18 inches high and flip it over to the wrong side. You want to mark the centers of each short edge here. So I mark the center here, and then I mark the center here on this side as well. The next thing you want to do is fold this in half with the wrong sides together. Match up the top and side edges. Fold it perfectly in half. And then you're going to make a small clip, and this is going to be the center bottom of the pouch. Now again, you want to make a very small clip because you need to be within that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'll do the same exact thing on the other side. Just fold it in half. It's important to make sure that those top and side edges are even with each other, and then make a very small clip. In this step, we're going to be sewing the side panel to the main pouch panel. You'll start by turning the main pouch panel so that it's wrong side up. And then you're going to take the side panel, and you want to match the bottom center of the side panel with the bottom center of the main pouch. Just like this. And then we're going to hold it in place with a few clips. I do like to use a lot of clips for this step. Then you're going to start easing the main panel around that side panel where the curve is. It helps to round it around your fingers, just like this, and then you'll put in a clip. And then you're going to keep easing around that curve, and then you'll work your way all the way up to the top. You're going to find that the jelly vinyl is very forgiving and flexible, and it will ease very nicely around that curve. Just be patient and take your time with it. Try and keep all of those edges nice and even with each other. Then after you have the first side clipped in, you're going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Clip everything in place and start easing that vinyl around that curve and rounding it around your finger. And again, keep the edges even and work your way up to the top of the side panel. After you have the side panel clipped into place, you want to make sure that the distance between the top of the side panel and the top of the main pouch is the same. And that should be somewhere around 1.5 inches. So 1.5 inches distance between the top of the panel here and the top of the side panel. The other thing that you want to make sure of is that the edge of your main panel is even with the edge of the side panel on both sides. Now we're going to sew the side panel to the main panel with a scant 1/4 of an inch, and a scant 1/4 of an inch is just slightly less than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to be sewing at that scant 1/4 of an inch seam with a stitch length of 3.0, and I will backstitch. Again, if you feel like the vinyl is sticking to the bed of the machine, you can just lift it up slightly as you're sewing. So we'll start out with a backstitch. And leave your clips in for as long as you possibly can. And you really just want to go slow here. And you can see that I am sewing from the side panel. When you start getting to the area where your curve is, you might just want to maneuver the pouch, just tuck it under there a little bit, sort of smush it down so that it's as flat as it can be. You're not going to hurt the vinyl by doing that. Maneuver the main pouch out of the way as you need to. And then backstitch when you get to the end. After you have that sewn into place, just check your seam really well from all sides. And if everything looks good, you can go ahead and start clipping in the second side panel. Now we can go ahead and clip in your second side panel, and this goes in exactly the same way. You'll start by matching up the center of the side panel with the center of the main pouch panel. Line it up. Make sure that all of those edges are nice and even with each other, and just start clipping in place. And you'll ease the curve of the side panel into the main panel by rounding it around your fingers. And then clip. You'll work up one side, and then you'll go ahead and clip in the other side. Once again, you want to make sure that you have the same distance between the top of the side panel and the top of the main pouch panel, and then you want to go ahead and check everything really well to make sure that all of your side edges are even. And then we're going to go ahead and sew this again with the same scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm ready to get started sewing in the other side panel. I'm still using my 3.0 stitch length and the scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've already backstitched, and again, if the work is sticking to the bed of your machine, just lift it up slightly and that will help you out. And you really just want to go slow. Now what some people do is they'll take a silicone sheet and tape it to the bed of the machine, and that will eliminate all issues with the pouch sticking to the bed of your machine. And when you get towards the curve, once again you want to tuck everything under and just try and flatten it out as much as you can. I need to backstitch because my thread just cut. I'll start sewing around that curve. Try and keep the work as flat as you can. I'm going to tuck under here. The curves are the hardest part to sew, but if you're just slow and take your time, you'll do just fine. And then I'll backstitch when I get to the end there. After sewing in the second side panel, you just want to go ahead and make sure that everything looks good. Make sure that you didn't get puckers anywhere, and then you can also take a look from the inside. In this step, we're going to be binding the sides of the pouch. So you're going to take the 2 strips that you cut out that are 3/4 of an inch wide by 20 inches long. You'll mark a line straight down the center of each one of those strips. Then you're going to place a row of double-sided adhesive tape on each side of that line, just the same way that you did when you prepared the binding for the top of that side panel. We'll move this one out of the way for now. And now I'm going to remove the release paper from one side of that strip. And then I'm going to take the bag, and I want to start placing the edge of the side right on that line. Could be slightly below the line, that's fine too. And we're just going to place this in place all the way around. I want to try and get it to adhere nicely there, especially around those curves. And once you have it in place and everything is adhering well, you can go ahead and remove the release paper from the other side. And then we're going to fold that binding over and adhere it down. Now, the binding on both sides should be covering your line of stitching. And you can hold this in place with some clips because the adhesive will want to pull away from the vinyl. You don't need a lot of clips for this, just a few to hold everything in place. We'll do this all the way around. I'm going to ease the binding in around the curve here. Just smush it down. Kind of ease it into the curve. Rounding it around your fingers really does help a lot. Then you work your way up to the other side. I find that this step is a lot easier if you're using the double-sided tape. If you don't want to use the double-sided tape, you don't have to. You would just fold it over the edge and clip it in place. After the binding is clipped into place, go ahead and make sure that the binding is covering the line of stitching from both the side panel side and the main pouch side. Once it looks good to you, we're going to top stitch approximately 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the binding on the side panel side of the pouch. I'm going to be sewing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the binding with a stitch length of 4.0. And again, lift up if you need to, if you find yourself sticking to the bed of your machine. And try and maintain that 1/8 of an inch distance from the edge of the binding. Keep the clips in for as long as you can. The double-sided tape is also in there to help you. It'll help keep everything as flat as it can possibly be as you're sewing around. And you really, just like before, you just want to go slow, especially around those curves. Tuck under if you need to. Feel with your fingers to make sure that everything is laying flat. And then you back stitch at the end. As usual, go ahead and check everything. You want to make sure that you caught the edge of the binding in the seam on both the main panel and on the side panels. Now, as you can see down here, I got two tiny little puckers. I have found in making these bags that sometimes I do get a little pucker, sometimes I don't. The secret is in keeping everything as flat as you possibly can, especially around those curves. You don't want to take it out because it would just leave holes in your vinyl, and you don't want to do that. So I'm okay with them. I'm just going to leave everything as is. I think it looks fine. Now you can go ahead and sew the binding in on the other side of the pouch in exactly the same way, and I will do mine off camera. Here's the binding sewn into the other side of the bag. Always check everything, make sure it all looks good. And now I'm just going to trim off these excess tails at the top. And if you're wondering why I cut the strips longer than they need to be, it's because I like to have a little bit of wiggle room. And now we can go ahead and work on the zipper. In this step, we're going to prepare our zipper to sew into the pouch. So you need your zipper plus the two zipper tabs. The first thing that you want to do is fold the zipper tabs in half, and then I'm going to use my point turner to burnish a crease where that fold is. And then I'm going to hold it together with a clip. And you'll do this to both of your tabs. Next, I want to remove some of the zipper teeth from each end of the zipper. And I'm going to cut off 1 inch of the zipper teeth on each end. And you'll understand why in a minute, why we're doing this. So 1 inch up from the bottom, and 1 inch up from the top. Then I'll take my scissors and I'm just going to cut right up to that 1 inch mark. You're not cutting off the zipper tape, you're only cutting off the teeth. And then you'll go ahead and do the same thing to the bottom of the zipper. Just be careful not to cut off your zipper tape. So this is what you should have now. Next, you're going to take those zipper tabs, and we want to place some double-sided adhesive tape on the inside of the tabs. So I'll just lay down a couple of rows of the double-sided tape. And then I'm going to remove the release paper. Now, I want to take the tab and I'm going to place the bottom of the zipper in the folded crease of that tab. Just like this. And adhere it down. And then I'll fold it over. I want to make sure that all of my edges are even when I fold everything over. And then just secure it down with that double-sided tape in there. Now the reason why we cut off the zipper teeth is because we're going to be putting a rivet right through the center of the zipper tab. And we don't want to have the zipper teeth where we're putting the rivet. Then you want to go ahead and place the second zipper tab on the top of the zipper in exactly the same way. So I'll put down 2 rows of the adhesive tape. remove the release paper, and then we're going to take the top of the zipper, and we want to place the top of the zipper right onto that fold of the tab. Make sure that your zipper is centered on the tab. And once you have it centered, you're just going to fold the other half over. Make sure that all of your side and top edges of your zipper tab are all even. After you have the zipper tab secured down with the double-sided adhesive tape, we're going to sew completely around this zipper tab 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'm ready to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper tab, and I'll be using a stitch length of 4.0. I am not going to backstitch. We'll take care of that in the end. So just go slowly. And when you get back to that fold, we're just going to sew over those original stitches all the way across. And then we're going to backstitch. And then you can go ahead and sew the zipper tab on the other side in exactly the same way. After stitching your tabs, just make sure that you caught the edges of the tab on the opposite side with your stitching. Next, you want to place a mark in the center of each one of these tabs. The mark should be 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom and centered from side to side. You also want to find the center of the zipper, which I've marked here. Then I'm just going to take my hole puncher and punch a hole right where I made that mark, and this will be for installing the rivet later on. You do that on both sides, and because we cut out the zipper teeth at that spot, we don't have to worry about punching any holes through the zipper teeth. Now we need to mark a line that is 1/4 of an inch up from the edge of the zipper tape on both sides of the zipper. The line needs to be 10 inches long, and we want the line to extend 5 inches away from the center on each side of that center mark. So I'm going to take my ruler, and you want to use an erasable marking tool for this. I have my 5-inch mark right where that center mark is, and now I'm going to draw the line up to that center mark, and then I'll draw the rest of the line on this side of the center mark out to the 10-inch mark. Now I am using a friction pen in the video. I only use these for demonstration purposes in my videos because while the ink will disappear with heat, it can come back with cold. So always be careful if you're using a friction pen. Then we want to do the same thing on this side. Mark a line 5 inches away from that center mark, 1/4 of an inch up from the edge of the zipper tape. Then we're going to flip this over to the wrong side of the zipper. I've marked my centers on the wrong side of the zipper here as well, and now we want to draw those same lines on the wrong side of the zipper. In this step, we'll be sewing the zipper into the pouch. The first thing that you want to do is take your double-sided adhesive tape and run a line of that tape all along the top edge of the pouch. You'll do this on each side of the pouch. Try and get your tape as close to that top edge as you can. And then after placing tape on this side, you'll go ahead and run a line of tape on the other side, which I've already done here. I'm going to take the top edge of the pouch on this side and just fold it back and hold it back in place with a couple of clips. Then I want to take my zipper and turn it so that the wrong side of the zipper is facing up. And then I'm going to remove the release paper on one side of the pouch only. Now I want to take this center mark right here and line it up with the center mark of the zipper. And we're going to place the top edge of that pouch along the line that we drew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper tape. So the right side of your jelly vinyl of your pouch is getting adhered to the wrong side of your zipper right now. And make sure that everything is adhered well and lined up properly. And we can turn it over to the right side just like this. And we're going to put our little binding strip along the edge of the zipper tape. So you want to take one of those binding strips that we cut out. This is the one that's 1/2 inch wide and 11 inches long. And we're going to place a row of double-sided adhesive tape down the center of the strip. Then you're going to remove the release paper. And we're going to take the strip and start adhering it to the pouch right along the zipper where we marked the line 1/4 of an inch up from the bottom of the zipper tape. Just adhere it all along the length. Remember, we cut it a little bit longer than it needed to be, so it's going to extend over the edge. Now that we have everything in place, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the binding strip. When we do that, it's also going to sew the zipper in place. So we're going to sew straight across 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, pivot, we'll sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, down the side, pivot again, sew across the bottom of the binding, pivot, sew up back to the top again. I'm ready to start sewing. I'm using a stitch length of 4.0 and I'm top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now I'm going to pivot And I'll sew 1/8 of an inch away from the side of the pouch. And then I'll pivot again, and I'm going to sew across that binding 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Try and keep everything underneath out of the way as you're sewing. And when I get to the side end of the pouch again, I'll pivot one more time. And now I'm going to pivot and finish off my stitching. I'm going to end by stitching over those original stitches right there. And then I will back stitch. Now to sew the zipper to the opposite side of the pouch, you want to open up your zipper all the way. You're going to remove the release paper. I'm going to flip it this way. And I'm going to clip this side back now. And now I want to line up the centers of my zipper with the center of the pouch. You want to make sure that your zipper is not twisted here. And then I will just start adhering the top of the pouch to the wrong side of the zipper. So again, the right side of the jelly vinyl is being adhered to the wrong side of the zipper. So this is what it should look like now. And I'm just going to close my zipper real quick just to make sure that I didn't get anything twisted, which can happen very easily. So it looks good. I'll open it up again and reclip this out of the way. And then I want to take the other strip, the 1/2 inch by 11 inch strip, remove my release paper and adhere it over the zipper, making sure to line that top edge of the binding with the line that we marked 1/4 of an inch up from the edge of the zipper tape. After everything is adhered into place, we're going to sew exactly the same way we did for the other side, straight across the top of the binding, down the side, across the bottom, and back up to the top, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Okay, I'm ready to sew down the binding, and I'm doing this exactly the same way as I did before. Now we can go ahead and trim off the excess binding on both sides, and then we can go ahead and install our rivets. In this step, we're going to install the rivets, and we need to mark the placement of the rivet on the side panels. And I pretty much eyeball this. So what I like to do is have my pouch sitting here, and then I'll take the ends and just gently press them down to the side. You don't want to pull too hard and have this sort of thing happen here. You just want to gently place them at the side, and where they land, that's where we're going to mark our placement. You do want to have that rivet centered in the middle of the side panel. So I'll just take my marking tool here and mark a hole. And then I just want to see if it looks like it's centered. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to pull gently down, and where it lands, that's where I want it to go. So I now have the mark on both sides. If you want, you can take a ruler and see if it's approximately the same height up from each side. So I've got 3.5 inches there, and I have about 3.5 inches there, so that's good. And then we can also measure across the side to see if it's about in the center. This one looks like it could be moved over just slightly. And then I do the same thing on this side. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. And that one looks like it's right in the center. So we're good with our placement. Now that we have the placement for the rivets marked, we're going to open up the zipper, and you're going to punch a hole right where you made your marks. And you'll punch the hole in the same way on the other side. In the original pouch, I did use cam snaps on the zipper tabs. I didn't think that was a good idea for the vinyl because the vinyl is just not as strong, and it's not going to be able to take the stress of the cam snaps. So I decided to use rivets instead. Now, what I am going to do is I have a scrap piece of vinyl that I've punched a hole in, and I've put some glue on. And this is, you can use like Fabri-Tac glue. And I'm just going to line up the holes on the scrap piece with the hole on the side. You're not going to see this. And I have another one here for the other side. And I will just adhere it in place with the glue. Just get that hole lined up. Press it down. And now I'm going to take my rivets. I'm going to put it through the hole on the zipper tab, and then I'll put it through the hole on the side panel. And then you can go ahead and install the cap on the other side. Right there. And then you'll press everything in place with a rivet setter. And then you want to go ahead and install the other rivet on the other side in exactly the same way. So here's the completed pouch with the rivets installed. I do have to say that working with the jelly vinyl was a lot easier than I expected it to be. This was my first time using jelly vinyl, and I really liked it. So I hope that the video was helpful to you, and I hope that you'll give the jelly vinyl a try. I want to sincerely thank everybody who has supported me by subscribing to my channel and liking my videos. I would love to see you over in my Facebook group, which is Rosie and David Patterns. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.